So here on the top looks like we get some instruction manuals. So looking at this real quick, it looks like one of these is good enough for up to 22,000 gallon pool. And here it kind of talks about everything you kind of need to do to take care of your pool, I guess. And right on top here we can see the ionizer itself. So we have a little solar panel here on the top. This thing is quite large actually. So we have these stickers here. Remington solar, read manual before use. Do not expose the panel to sunlight unless it's in the water. So you don't want to leave this thing out in the sun doing nothing. Let's pull it out. Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty large spring on the bottom of it. Quite large actually. And in the middle there, you guys can see there's like a threaded bolt. So let's see what else is in the box. So we got more boxes. Okay, these feel like copper rods. And there's another box here. So let's see what's in this larger light box. Alright, so it looks like this is all of our accessories. So it looks like we have some kind of mesh filter. Our copper test strips to test for copper in the pool. And here's the indicators, nylon Y bolts, and a cleaning brush. And these here should have the copper rods, yep. And these things are quite heavy actually. So the good part about this is that this copper rod should last probably for about a year. And then we got another one here, so there's two of them. So this should last technically for a couple years. Now the only thing is that you have to clean this thing off every week or every other week, depending on, you know, how bad it oxidizes. So the copper rod has a threaded hole for the bolt to go in, and the nylon bolt here on the other end to hold the filter. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread the copper into that bolt in there. Kind of have to compress the spring. Probably going to need 2 hands here. Yeah, it's not too bad. Just got to compress the spring and then tighten it with your hand. And I'm guessing you probably don't want to make it too tight because you don't want to break anything off in there. So in order for this to work, your spring can't touch the copper part. So when you compress this, you got to make sure that this, you know, there's a nice gap in between the copper and the spring. And you got to even it out. And so this filter here will go right on top. But honestly, it has a little spacer in there where it spaces the spring, and you can't really get it wrong. So it's nice that they give you a couple of these little wing nuts, because if one breaks you have an extra one. And then we're going to start the wing nut on top. And you definitely want to be careful how you start this. You want to make sure it goes in the right way, because if you go and cross thread it, you're going to mess up the wing nut for sure. So we're just going to keep going to the very bottom until this thing hits the bottom, I guess. Or I guess it never does hit the bottom and it's already tight. But the important part, as you guys can see, is that the copper is right in the center of the spring and not touching anywhere. So it is going to be a little closer in some areas than others, but as long as it's not touching, this should work. Now the second they touched, it's going to short out the circuit and it's not going to do anything. So that's pretty much it, and now all we got to do is throw it into the pool and hope for some good results. So I'm going to try to dip it down just a bit, see if we can kind of see any kind of reaction maybe. To be honest, I don't really see anything. Well, actually no, there's some bubbles coming up. I see some really fine bubbles. Okay, so something's happening. It's maybe a little hard to tell, but you can see that there's bubbles forming, so it is working. Okay, so that's good news. Alright, so we just let it swim around in the pool like that, and it's supposed to do its magic. So I think we should go ahead and take a sample right now and see how much copper we have in the pool. And then after about a week of that thing being in the water, we're going to test it again and see if there is a difference. Alright, so I'm just going to dip it in the pool. Pull it out, and here guys we can see it's very light, so there's practically zero copper in the pool right now. So I'm hoping that we can get to, you know, somewhere around here on the 1.1 or 0.9 level. That would be nice. Even a 0.5 would be good, I think so. But here on the video you guys should be able to tell the difference, and I'll be back in a week with another strip. Alright guys, so it's been exactly a week, and it's kind of hard to tell, but you can definitely tell that the strip is a little bit darker. But there seems to be some copper in there. Either way, I have noticed a big difference in the pool. First of all, it's much clearer. And I have not added chlorine of any sort whatsoever for almost 2 weeks. I did have some tablets floating around, which are there in the infinity part down there. And they've almost pretty much dissolved. So there has been no chlorine added for 2 weeks in this pool. And it seems to be clearer than ever before. So overall, this thing seems to be working very well. I did check up on it a few times, and I noticed definitely something going on in there because it's green on the bottom. And there's some chunks in there also. So it's definitely time for cleaning, but it's been a week, so that's, you know, about the right time anyways for it. And it's starting to shed some of that stuff through the mesh. And you can kind of see when I picked it up, I don't know if you can tell or not, but there's all these fine particles that kind of fell out of it. So it might be a good idea to clean this thing a little bit more, maybe twice a week instead of once a week. But in any case, we need to open it up and see what happened in there. Alright, so let's unscrew the nylon nut, or bolt should I say. Maybe probably a good idea to flip it over. Kind of push on it, it'll release it a little easier. Yeah, it's definitely dirty in there. And there's some oxidation of copper inside there also. So I think the best thing to do at first is take a hose and just rinse it off. And then maybe we can unscrew the copper and look at it a little closer. And also be careful touching this stuff because it seems to be staining quite easy. Yeah, there's a lot more stuff coming out of this. You can see there's a black coating on it, and if you spray it, it falls right off. Look at that. Okay, now that we got most of it off, the large stuff, and look at it a little closer so you can see all the pitting. So it's definitely working, whatever it's doing. Okay, yeah, it's definitely rubbing off. So there's a green coat on the copper, and it seems to be coming off quite easy. And you can see the exposed copper underneath. So that's actually a lot easier to take care of than I thought it would be. Well, that's awesome. I'm going to go ahead and rub this whole thing down. So it doesn't look like that the spraying itself was negatively affected, but I guess we should probably rub it down anyways, just in case it has a layer of something on it. But yeah, overall guys, very easy maintenance. Like this shouldn't take more than about 5 to 10 minutes to do.